What is up, you savages? This is the Protect Your Neck podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Tom. Analyst is work you can find over at MMAJunkie.com, but on this here program, the Protect Your Neck podcast, we break down high-level MMA. That's what we're going to do here today, tonight, whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully it's before the fight. Recording this Thursday night as opposed to my normal Friday. Probably would have been recording it earlier if not for yesterday's events. So I'm going to try to get through this as fast as I can with just with just an update and stuff off the top, I guess. So I'll just quickly remind you to check the show notes for when the breakdown starts from top to bottom. Also, shouts to Zane Simon and Steffi Hayes, great producer, OG talent there, Bloody Elbow, for having me on the Vivisection to not replace, but to sub in for my man Connor Rebush, who, smart man, taking a vacation on a light week like this. I kind of am. Like I said, it's weird, right? Because I took one of these weeks off so I could work ahead for the Amasoff Lima card and, of course, the U263, the three headliners, so to speak, on that. Plus my usual, and I'm going to try to get you guys that breakdown by like Tuesday before I leave for Hawaii next week, which was part and parcel of the reason of why I needed to take some time off. So that's why you're not going to see an in-depth breakdown for Rosenstrach Sakai, I know, but I'll quickly go through it here for you. And I did more of an in-depth breakdown as the show's format co-host can afford on the Vivisection, so I just wanted to shout that out. But as you can hear, Brownie, you need to stop. The dog is in the background, or as you follow me on social media, maybe heard briefly on the note on the intro of the top, a little bit of a Modest Mouse float on, because that is about all I can do with everything going on. And I hate to say that constantly and sound like a complainer, but those of you who've been listening to the podcast know it's like back in 2017. Like anytime there's an off week in the UFC or I take an off week, shit happens, and nonetheless, that is the case here. Just so I got I'm like one-armed right now, pretty much. Doesn't look like it's going the way of infection, which is good. So, I should be fine. All the fingers work. But I broke up a dog fight and suffered a pretty bad puncture wound on my right arm there, and it literally went spraying Kill Bill style. And it was crazy. To make anybody woozy or anything, but like, I didn't even notice it at first. I usually have much better dog breaking up technique, but the fight's been stepping up lately, which is weird. I can still count them on one hand, but I think we're at 5 now within 18 or 20 months. And it's been stepping up lately because Brownie here, who's whimpering, hasn't had her weekly exercise that she normally gets because, like I said, I got scammed by the trainer, which I found out when I went to go board Ben and book their boardings, which was the whole point of it. And then so Brownie could get training because, as anybody knows, everything's been hard on the pandemic. I can't imagine how you people with children have been. My hat's off to you if you're doing self-schooling and stuff like that. For that period, but anybody with kids, animals, whatever. Pandemic obviously made it challenging, plus as well as my situation, which for those of you who don't know, I also help take care of my mother, and she comes in a pair with my stepfather, who has a laundry list of his own problems. 5th Special Forces Vietnam vet, so he's got a lot of medical issues as well. And my mom had multiple brain aneurysm surgery last year, and stroked out, and had to re-facilitate all her senses back during the pandemic. And she's good motor skill wise and stuff. Like, she can even drive a car. Everything came back. But everything's been so chaotic, and I don't want to sound like negative guy stuff, because it's like, believe me, I tried everything. It's like, I don't want to do the self-fulfilling prophecy thing, so it's like, anyways. But I feel like Al Swearingen from Deadwood, between the constant health problems to my dogs being like his henchmen, right? Always getting into shit, and I'm having to clean it up, getting bloody in the process. And then my mother is like the and it sounds really dark, but sometimes you just have to make dark humor to get by. And obviously, I obviously love my mother, but she speech-wise, reminds me a lot of the character, the maid, the older maid. So this place is essentially like Al Swearengen's whorehouse without the whores, is what I'm trying to say. And and so yeah, I often feel that way. That thankfully, though, she was here, especially if I did pass out, because I break up the fight, and again, I usually have better technique. But they've been getting in more fights lately, and the other one happened actually just a couple weeks ago, or a week and a half ago or so. And Ben got the worst of it, and so I'm very protective. I'm gonna get a tattoo of Benjamin, my original pit bull boy. And the younger girl's been antagonizing him, Brownie, and I'll get to the fights, folks. It's time stamped again if you want to skip ahead. But yeah, so I've been extra protective. So instead of the usual technique where I kind of get collar behind the neck, hips behind, pull, kick off the other kind of a deal, I was a little more protective of him, because last time I did that, she got the better of him and hung on to his lips and tore a bit. So it's like instinctually I didn't want that to happen. So it's like I put my arm in between them, to cover his face to protect him, and then he didn't know I was there, so he just ended up biting back to her, but ended up getting me, I think, is what happened. And she, all my leg damage you saw in the picture, I think, was from her claws, slicing me up pretty good there. And I knew I got hit or whatever. I thought I was fine. And my mom, she kind of, I'm like, oh, she kind of overreacts to everything, so I'm like, okay. Excuse me. Not overreacts, but I guess overreacts, not loud, but emotionally it takes a toll on her. So I was she's pointing blood. I'm like, I'm fine. And I look down, I just see pouring and spurting like a wide stream, not even a small faucet, like a wide stream. I was like, holy fuck. And I had enough wherewithal and sense to keep my arm elevated, got some paper towels, a wad of them, put pressure on the wound, and was keeping pressure on it. And the dogs stopped immediately, of course. They were freaked out. And there's blood all over the kitchen floor. And I thought I was fine, and I start feeling lightheaded. And I'm like, I lost a lot of blood, but I couldn't have lost that much and be feeling lightheaded that fast. Of course, it was shock. I didn't realize it. And not to make light of Shane Burgos, but I felt and looked a lot like Shane Burgos versus Barbosa, because I started making my way from the sink, and I'm kind of woozy. I just go sit down by the couch. I start making my way there, and I just start stumbling. It's like I was going downhill, and I couldn't keep my feet under you when you're going too fast downhill. I was doing that all of a sudden on a flat surface, and then I ended up crashing down on the tile floor in front of my fireplace with my arm up, almost as if you're trying to keep a hold of the football despite the tackle. And I have enough wherewithal to keep my arm up the whole time. So I'm doing what us cage side doctors over here, right, are just presuming Shane is doing, and he's just trying to fight the effects of biological nature. And I was able to maintain consciousness, although that whole sequence felt very drunk. And I was able to keep my arm up and keep pressure on it until my stepdad, who's an ex-paramedic, and his nephew is an active head paramedic out here in Las Vegas. By that time, it was about 20 minutes, supposed to be 25 minutes elevated above heart level to stop the bleeding. And the bleeding stopped, and which was good because my mom was there, A, and then I didn't pass out, B, because if I passed out and no one was there, then that would have been very problematic. I would have probably kept bleeding, and there wouldn't have been a podcast today. Although those of you know me better than even me, and I appreciate you guys. Y'all are probably right. I probably shouldn't even have to be, or shouldn't even be doing this podcast, and I know you guys are probably going to scold me for it, and I appreciate and love y'all for it. Those of you who even tried to book me for podcasts, and I feel bad and have a hard time saying no, but y'all have just been super understanding, and reminding me there's good humans in the space. So shouts to the Brads, Chucks, Blaine Henrys, etc., and everybody else out there wishing me well, of course. Also giving your advice, appreciative. Helps humanize things. Helps Gina get ready to take a shot. Sam Yang sample size. So Sam Yang replied to the vivisection saying take a shot every time Dan Tom says sample size, and I'm like, oh fuck. A, he's totally right, and I got no defense to that. But B, not that this is in my defense, but I guess a warning. Crutch words like sample size, I definitely crutched and lean into as if it were a crutch, hence the saying. A lot harder considering I did a top to bottom podcast on an hour notice, an hour's prep, as I didn't watch any fights, which I did admit off the top of the show in my defense. And as you know, Dan Tom can still bring it and pull details off of his Brizane. But yeah, there's going to be definitely a lot of sample size words used, probably ahead of this show and on that vivisection. But what was I talking? What was I talking? I'm gonna wrap up this dog talk stuff here in a sec, here, folks. So bear with me. But yeah, was able to keep the blood on that. Got some sturry strips. Everything looks like it's healing in the right way. I just, it just sucks. I'm a dog lover. It's not about team human or team animal. I love dogs, and I imagine because a lot of dog people, you both value loyalty, unconditional love and loyalty. Probably because there wasn't a lot in your life, as much as we make fun of dog or cat people, but there is a quiet but important correlation there, I believe. I'm not saying you have to have a dog to have empathy, etc. I'm just saying, as far as that connection goes, yeah, you can call me guilty, you can call me weak. I'm into establishing dominance and punishing a dog and etc. But I let's just say I try to go by the book. A lot of YouTube videos to reinforce what I was doing right and correct what I was doing wrong. Yeah, I gotta find a solution here fast and shore up the things that I could be doing better, but also while still keeping realistically the options open, and perhaps finding Brownie, the younger one. Maybe she needs a single home, not with another dog. I don't know. I gotta figure it out. Like I said, I was getting the training in professional, but was getting ripped off there. Had to scramble to find them a new place, which again I won't be able to. They won't be able to see until the day I drop them off, or the day I fly out. So that's kind of nerve-wracking. And yeah, so I haven't been that irresponsible. But yeah, it's just been a lot. So I think I already went into the situation that I'm. Sorry, this is like my third or fourth time having to record. So it's like, did I say that? Did I say the Al Swearingen thing? Did I explain the situation with my mom and what I'm dealing with, and amongst the dog issues, amongst the man, and amongst all the stuff? Yeah, we all deal with. Yeah, it's been a lot. So yeah, apologies for this little vent sesh to catch you guys up, but I am okay. For anybody that saw the scary post, and the dogs are okay. Just got to figure out what to do, and try to get to this trip. Like I said on previous recording, and I've said this before, like I have recurring nightmares of planes being late going to or from Hawaii, and all hell's breaking loose. I'm trying to pack, and everything's just getting in the way. And I think that's just because I work in a very high-stress job, and outside of the not really high-stress job, I have an amazing job. Between the taking care of people and all these other things I deal with, I have to manage a lot of stress, more than the average Joe, but my hardwiring is not probably meant to handle the normal average Joe amount of stress, so that's problematic wiring there. And I think that, then you add in a deadline job, I should say. That's where the job comes in. And I think that's where the being late for a plane, because you're always under deadline, and USC's every week, and it never stops, right? That could take a toll on your psyche, subconscious. And so I have these dreams, so it's just like, and we all stress out naturally, right? Because we're trying to prep before a trip. that's natural, especially today's age with all the extra protocols. And then all this stuff factored in, it's crazy. I just put on a t-shirt. I was on my way out to run some errands, and I wore a shirt that was light of color, which is not too much like me. Johnny Cash, like Dan Tom over here, always wearing black. And my first thought is, I'm going to spill some shit on this. And I'm like, Dan, don't think negative. Besides, you just had your coffee. You just had your smoothie for the day. That's usually the culprits. What could possibly stain this shirt? 5 seconds later, smash cut. Blood. So that's it's okay, Brownie. It's fine. Brownie, relax. Sorry, folks. Hey, Brownie, stop. So as I get sidetracked from, but yeah. So, God damn it. I don't want to stop this because it's going to make an edit, and then I'm going to lose track, which is why I had to re-record like the third time. Yeah. Who gives a fuck, Dan? I think you covered everything. Anyways, I have one note here. It says Tybura Beer Run for the breakdown, which says a lot. So we'll see. That tells you what you're in for. Actually, I came back from the grocery store because, again, I was on my way out to run some errands, and I have to do certain errands, certain things I have to do on my own. Oh, what I was going to say, too, and I was holding the blood. And I'm getting my, we're trying to stop the bleeding on the puncture wound. I'm trying not to focus it on at that point, right? Because it's just, my body's coming down from shock. And, my stepdad's there. He's got the arm. And my mom's down working on my knee as I'm laying down. And I go, this is also why I made that Deadwood comparison, so people don't think I'm cruel here. So I do have to follow that up. But she goes, I go, all right, how's it looking down there? She goes, and with the stroke, again, her motor skills are fine, but like she will mix basic things. And she has all her memories, but she will mix basic things up, like he, like she'll say good boy to the girl, good girl to the boy, and I know what she means. Although it is still good to correct her, according to the speech therapists and stuff. Or she'll say yes for or no, like she'll mix up really just basic stuff. So once you get a hang of her, you kind of understand what she means. But it's hard though, and props to her, she held it together enough to call my stepdad, thankfully. But I'm asking her how my leg's looking, and it's the lesser of the two, so I'm not expecting anything. But she goes, it's real bad, and I'm like, what? She goes, it's real bad, and part of me is like, I think she's trying to tell me it's gonna be okay, and I'm like, Mom. Are you sure that it's not going to be okay, or it's going to be real bad? No, it's going to be real bad. And I think what she meant was, no, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, Mom, because all I've been watching is like zombie movies and war movies. So the bite and me laying down bleeding out on the floor just seemed really appropriate. I'm like, speaking of fantasies from movies to your dreams becoming reality, right? Like everything is just fucking coming out of the pages for me. And I'm like, Mom. In war movies, when people are shot, they still tell them they're going to be okay. You're telling me it's really bad. I can't see my leg, please. And it was some gnarly cuts on my knees, to her credit. But, yeah, so that's what I mean, folks, Meanwhile, Jack's like, he's a he's combat medic from Vietnam and stuff, and he's older now. He's got like pulmonary embolisms that we're monitoring. He's got all these health problems, so he's all shaking. He's fucking making the wounds worse. I'm like, stop, I'll do it. So I mean, it's I love them and I'm grateful, especially on days like yesterday, to have them here. But everything that's one step will get turned into three, and on days like yesterday or now, that what I'm dealing with now is very frustrating. So I'm going to try and get through this, folks. 20 minutes. We're going to start the breakdown for UFC Vegas 28. UFC Rosenstruck versus Sakai. We're going to go top to bottom, as usual. I'm going to try to make this real fast here. Try to hit all the notes. Like I said, I just came back from Whole Foods because I was running errands, and I saw Marcin Tybura. And so one of my only breakdown notes is Marcin Tybura beer run. Because there's a little tease here. I may or may not divulge, allegedly. some of the contents I spotted in his cart. All right, Tibura. All right, first up, Jairzinho Rosenstruck, minus 120. Augusto Sakai, plus 100. Try not to cough in a mic there, apologize. But yeah, I ended up going with Rosenstruck. It's not a confident pick. I hate the pick. I'm worried that I think majority of staff members at Junkie picked Rosenstruck, which means Sakai, it's heavyweight. No one should be surprised if Sakai, this is the smaller cage, which suits him. He's not technical, but he's much more active in general, especially in the clinch. So whether or not he gets takedowns, if he makes this ugly in the clinch, he could win that kind of a fight. He has the gas tank to make it ugly for that kind of a fight, and Rosenstruck has the gas tank sensibilities and durabilities to sit there and take that kind of a fight. So, I don't blame anybody if they were, looking at fatties, but I was talking to the person who originated that line, fatties, at Brass Chuck there, and it's pretty chalky, so the bookmakers already pretty much saw where it was coming, so you got to pay for that if you want that angle. Otherwise, I'm not too confident on an angle for this fight. I'm going to take Rosenstruck reluctantly by a late stoppage or a decision after scaring maybe Sakai away enough with some of his shots. Jairzinho Rosenstruck, whether he lands or doesn't land, does tend to have that effect, or can have that effect, is shown to, so we'll see. Again, not a guy you want to count on. He's going to sit there and just throw that left hook, but kind of like Zane brought up, obviously Sakai and Gane are obviously different on paper and visually, but stylistically too. Gane is a lot more savvy, more athleticism, more tools, more fluidity through the phases, and even he had to really fight disciplined and really turn that up, whereas Sakai has never shown that, not very defensively reliable. So I suspect ultimately, even though volume is his friend, that volume may walk him into the wood chipper here. So I'm going to go Rosenstruck, not confident. God bless you if you're playing it. By the way, spoiler alert, since there wasn't any hard research done, no plays, which is probably how it should be, right? I know that might be disappointing for some of you guys to hear. We'll see. Maybe some lines may change my mind. You'll get the live, genuine reactions, some up-to-date. I know we had a matchup change or two since I recorded the Vivi, but so there are things to look forward to. Tybura beer run, which we'll get to here in a second, but warning, not the most plays. Marcin Tybura, minus 175. Walt Harris, Kevin Smith references here, plus 155. I went with Walt Harris again, probably to be disappointed, probably for my bias with Southpaws and my overly sympathetic hat. For any brothers or sisters going through situations like that. Jeez, cannot imagine. So, who wouldn't want Walt Harris to get a win here? However, Tybura favored for a reason. Small cage suits his style, sensibilities, especially this type of matchup. So, again, if he makes it ugly, no one should be surprised. I don't know why I'm picking another athletic, opportunistic striker, like I said on the Vivi. This is not my MO, for those of you that know good old Dan Tom. But I am going to take Walt. Again, a lot of bias for Extreme Couture, too, as well. He's working with my man Eric Nixick. But to Walt's credit, he didn't just briefly cross-train. He looked like he really committed himself to this camp. Stayed with Francis Ngannou. Got the guys like Latifi's, Dolidze's, got all these looks in. Some other wrestlers as well they brought in. Really worked on his wrestling and conditioning. Sharpening up his striking, too, as well, which I agree, but shout out to the TSN MMA show. I listened to some interviews there this week. But like Zane was saying, he can kind of present his hips or, get off balance. And I think working with Eric Nixick's going to help that on the pads, the pacing, and the conditioning. Eric, like with Ngannou, will put him toward the right wrestlers as well as working with Ngannou. I think they even was sharing wrestling shoes and shit. He was really just Ngannou really was just helping him out in a lot of ways, which is always cool to hear. So you want to see those things. And again, my bias to Eric or Extreme Couture's side, We've seen those improvements with the aforementioned Ngannou, Ige, and his pacing. Tavares never had pacing issues, was already experienced, and already an underrated defensive wrestling, but took it to even another level as we saw in his last fight. Whatever they're doing there, they know what they're doing kind of a deal and have been proving it through many different, don't want to say sample sizes, take a shot, Sam Yang, through many different situations. and yeah, so I'm gonna take a flyer on that. But if he doesn't get it done early, you can count that it's gonna look bad. Walt can tend to implode a bit. We've seen before. And I guess last note is he is working with the last southpaw who beat him, the only southpaw who he faced and he lost to, which was Tim Johnson. Granted, it was a rugged fight. That is Marcin Tybura. Of course, Tim Johnson, kind of a regular at Extreme Couture, another heavyweight body, another wrestler, etc. The thing to look out for, though, all bias and picks aside, real talk analysis, is I'm going to be curious to see what Walt does in the clinch, because striking in or out of the clinch has been where Tybura has been traditionally hurt and or stopped, win or lose. When you look at his fights and where the positioning of the cage happened, so that's going to be really curious, because when Walt gets in there, it's like going to be like who's that tall guy? Daniel Spitz. It's like, does he stay disciplined or does he kind of fall into the clinch and risk getting wrestled at that point? So that's going to be something to watch for. But I got Walt here, even though you can get some nice dog money on him. It's heavyweight MMA, folks. I would not be confident either way. But what's in the box? What's in the cart? I did see Marcin Tybura. By the way, no mask. None of his team wearing masks, which is fine. I know we're moving back to normal. Do you want to stop that? No, relax, folks. Don't come at me with your torches. I'm not trying to stir up the masses about that shit. But like, for example, I didn't wear it at a couple places. It felt weird, and then reminded myself that okay, there's still a chance, even though you're vaccinated, you can get something, and I don't want anything to ruin this trip. So my ass be masked up when I go into these crowded places. Still, I don't care if people make fun of me. So hopefully, I don't know what the vaccination situation in Poland is, or Marcin's situation, but considering that he just doesn't just travel, but with these fighters and these fights getting pulled, I get it. Whole Foods is the one place these fighters are allowed to go. I don't know how strict their protocols are, if that's still true or not. But so maybe that's like the only freedom he gets. Yeah, him and his team just cruising, no mask in sight, and loading up on the beers, the Budvas. I was gonna say American beers, but judging, I saw some Fat Modelo bottles, so he's being a company man there. And I would say saying North American with Budweiser, but I think I amongst many make the ignorant mistake of it's Bud Light, Budweiser, America, but it's a Czech beer, Budva. It's Czech actually in origin, right? So hops and such, but yeah, some good old Budva, and again, it could have been for the cornermen, but Marcin looked particularly happy to be handling the beer. So we'll see. He's heavyweight, man. I'm like, what is it? The day before? What is this guy grocery shopping the day before weigh-in? I'm like, oh, fucking heavyweight. That's why. Fucking everyone else is just fucking dying, suffering. Already fucking in their little miniature saunas in their hotel room. Fucking heavyweight MMA folks. Another reason why it's so lovely. And don't be so mad when me or especially guys like the Fight Site take shots at them. Like, these guys get to go to fucking grocery stores the day before weigh-ins, folks. Okay, so let's relax. I'm sure the beers are for after the match, and who knows if they aren't. Again, he's heavyweight. He can get away with that shit, I suppose, depending on his philosophy on the drinking and performing. So I got Harris. It's like, yeah, buy more beer, Tybura. Who are you and why are you talking to me? I'm just saying, buy more beer. Like Google Translate how to say it in Polish and just whisper it through the mask as I walk by. He looks around like, did I hear that? Sorry. Anyways, all right. We got Miguel Baeza minus 120. Santiago Ponzinibbio. Sorry. I always feel like Danny Trejo introducing Selma Hayek when I say that name. Pandemonio. Bow your head. You sly dog. Bow your head. Sorry. I know Dan Tom doing a From Dusk Till Dawn reference. That never happens. I ended up submitting my staff picks for Miguel Baez. I don't feel comfortable about it. I feel extra less comfortable that I said he had a good left hook, which maybe he does. I don't know. I still haven't went back to watch it. But I did listen to a bit of Heavy Hand. Shout out to Connor there and Phil. I guess Connor didn't fully take off this week. I see, even when we take off, folks, cut us a break, even us weird analyst type, even when we take off, we don't really take off. It never stops. Like the warden to Andy. Shawshank. Oh my god. Shawshank reference here too, Dan. But yeah, so they were saying on the Heavy Hands podcast that Miguel Baez is just really right hand happy. He's got like the orthodox version of the double attack, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that too. Yep, okay. So maybe I'm completely off, but the left hook was one of the things I was attaching my pick to, just because of that beautiful breakdown done by the fight site. I don't know if it was Julian Leung or a man at Phoenix Sky who does a lot of their video content there. Either way, subscribe to their channel and their stuff. It was just pointing out how Ponzinibbio can behave those left hooks when he retreats, too linear, doesn't do the thing that Michael Chandler didn't do and used to do when he was working with Gil Martinez for his boxing, which is like rolling under your crosses, much less stepping out of that angle, which it encourages a bit, or the slight angle. Instead, you kind of just fade back and you get hit with a left hook. We'll see. It's been 6 months. It seems like it's been sooner. So technically, he's riding that line of when you generally don't like to see a fighter come back from a stoppage loss. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, you don't want to take too much time off because he's already been, hindered. We'll see how he comes into this. Baeza, interesting. I'm curious to see if he builds more on his grappling and wrestling. That being said, I don't know if this is the opponent to do it on, because even if he does get takedowns, Ponzinibbio, a black belt in his own right as well, has a good get-up urgency against the cage. He's kind of always had that smaller cage, so imagine he should still have that here. But if Baez is able to do enough and alleviate some pressure, maybe that keeps him from getting corralled and buzzer beaten down like Ponzinibbio eventually did to Magny. So we'll see there. I expect both guys to be aware, active leg kickers, and come from camps that really spam the calf kick. So we could see some kamikaze action of both guys just hacking away each other there, overly confident. But I'm going to go Baeza, which feels wrong. I hope I'm wrong here. Ponzinibbio's with a... I don't know what the value is because you can't trust him, but I'm hoping Ponzinibbio wins. I'm picking Baeza, though. Next fight, Roman Dolidze minus 145. Money looks like it came in, and rightfully so, on Laureano Staropoli. Of course, I'm biased and will be picking Dolidze as I have so far in his UFC career. But, well, it's weird. No, money shouldn't... I think the line tightened a little bit, but it's been boomerang because Staropoli originally opened as the favorite, which I don't blame. It's just one of those things where I think, the welterweight's coming up from, or welterweight coming up to middleweight, whereas a middleweight cutting down from heavyweight, they're going with the bigger guy. But Staropoli's pretty big, and he's pretty thick and filled out, so I don't know how much of a size difference. I think it'll be more of like a Trevin Giles, who beat Dolidze last time, more of a cop than a Mike Russo or, hey, Chris. I can't even use Chris Dawkins, man. Yeah, I like Chris Dawkins' attitude, and he's been tightening up. So, but you know what I mean. One of those physiques. I don't think Staropoli's going to roll in here with that. He does come from Charles Oliveira's camp. Been training there more often, as opposed to Argentina, I believe, where he's from. Apologies if I'm wrong on there. But Roman Dolidze, Georgian fighter, just really reckless though. If he didn't have Eric Nixon in his corner, I would fade him every time. I don't blame people for playing against him here, especially now that you're getting a plus money on Staropoli. That already justifies your pick and play. You don't have to argue with me. That's for sure. But I do believe that the small cage will favor and force more of the kind of exchanges that Dolidze will favor. It'll be harder for Staropoli to stay on his bike and outpoint him, which he could easily do, by the way, if Dolidze just keeps throwing in single strikes. I'm getting overly fancy. We'll we'll see. This is some guys you really can't change. So Eric or not, I wouldn't. Knowing the coach or not, I mean, I still wouldn't condemn a corner for a guy like the Leadze. That being said, I do hope that corner can continue to influence the Leadze, because those are definitely his best moments when he does listen to his corner. He's got the talent there. It's just he's a freaking wild man, not one to really trust with your money, especially as a favorite. But I will be picking him here. Genuinely think he'll get the exchanges he needs and wants. And be curious to see what we see of Staropoli, but a real dangerous fight to play, either side. Though, again, don't blame anybody taking the shot on Staropoli. Dusko Todorovic, minus 130. Gregory Rodriguez, plus 110. Speaking of glass cannons, did I talk about glass? Yeah. Speaking of glass cannons, Gregory Rodriguez could be one. We'll see. Dusko Todorovic does do a lot of the striking ins and out of the breaks, like I cited earlier. I think that'll serve him well here. But if he gets clobbered against, I want to say he's a much bigger guy, it's hard. Dusko Todorovic looks like he's small, and he's not huge for the division or big by any means. But, perhaps he's not small. Brownie, relax. Perhaps he's not small. So we'll see. Either way, I don't think he wants to get pushed up against the cage against Rodriguez, who got his black belt under Jacare Souza's teacher. We'll see. So I'm going to pick Todorovic, who has been successful in that cage, whereas Gregory Rodriguez is not. We'll see. Real hard to be super confident. Tom Breeze, minus 240. Antonio Arroyo, plus 200. Will Breeze return to his Kurgan-like form? Will he have the darkness around his eyes? Or will he, kind of implode, crumble, so to speak? Crumble sounds much more crueler than implode. Try to use implode, but it is true. We've seen these things happen. We broke down a bit of Walt Harris's history on the Vivi, who I love, obviously, and I'm another fan of this southpaw here, Tom Breeze. A big fan of Tom, but again, you can't deny what you've seen. You've seen him kind of break down in there. And although I'm calling it for what it is, again, another reason why, and I've even defended fighters like Rose, right? If you go and check the tapes here, when it comes to mental fortitudes, mental health, in battle, pre-battle, or post-battle, because one, it's like you're going to call, someone fighting in a cage here who's clearly done it before. This is just a hard thing to do. And I've been on a history rabbit holes. I really try to educate myself more, and really on a World War II one, which was cool. Cool and watching a lot from Japanese perspective. And there's a lot of real whole psychological perspectives from all perspectives of that Pacific theater. But overall, in World War II, things that get overlooked because it's glamour. You get World War I, the bloodiest war, and Vietnam, all the controversy and the guerrilla tactics. And World War II, kind of like as the 50s, is often painted in this golden era, and there's a lot of things to be proud of. I'm not shitting on it, but what you don't realize is it was just not, if not more, bloodier than a lot of wars as well, with body parts and strung things like that. Only certain things shown through the newly acquired media then. But also, I think it was upwards of and this might be just for the American side, 600,000, not casualties, because they didn't die, but as far as soldiers taking out of service for psychological reasons. And again, what was it, 41 through 45, 4 years, just the American side, 600,000 collectively with our forces, folks. And because again, when dogfights happen, in reference to the earlier episode, sometimes my mom or a girlfriend, they'll freeze and they can't react. And I remember I was proud for the times that it did happen, because when things happen, just like my friends would get in fights or things would happen in the street back in the day, I'd be probably I will get in there and react. Whether I get smashed in the face or smash someone else in the face, that's a whole other story and conversation. But I'm proud that I step up. I step the fuck up. However, there is that gear, but even if you do have that gear, that doesn't mean you don't have I'm going to go into shock anytime I see blood. I know Joey Diaz, and this is apparently not uncommon amongst men. Joey Diaz, Rogan's friend, comedian, he passed out watching BJ Penn and Joe Stevenson, UFC 80, rapid fire, just from TV. That was in the UK. He was here, and I don't even think Joey can travel. But blood can really trip you out. And like with mine, I thought, with what I do and my experience with martial arts and not exposure to violence like on a level of a paramedic. It's okay, Brownie. Ouch. Oh, fucking but exposure to just cuts and blood and, with what I cover, in person or not, you just think it wouldn't be anything. Gym, seeing, things just broken, snapped, elbows dislocated, like you just up close and personal. I thought I was desensitized to anything, and I felt so weak and vulnerable, man. I'm not proud of it, but my body was just overtaking me. I could barely stand, right? So the psyche is a really powerful thing on so many levels, folks. And back to that 600,000 air quotes casualty mark, because for lack of a better word, for psychological casualty, it shows how common these things are. So if 600,000 for the armed forces of those 4 years, and there's only a handful of fighters, and of course they all deal with it, by the way, folks. Don't be mistaken. They all deal with fears and anxieties. But only a handful of fighters that notably done on a notable level to where it becomes their thing, or you can point to certain incidents. Like, I feel like MMA's doing pretty damn good for itself, A. And B, maybe not that it should take that elongated example or some dope like me telling you, but, maybe cut these fighters a little more slack. Maybe they're a little more brave, these men and women are, than you're giving credit for. They are fighting in a cage, and even people who are bravely signing up to fight for our country, we don't know what equipment we're working with, man. God, whoever you believe in, science decides that shit. We don't got to say. You get what you get. So, long example, but between what I've been into outside of the podcast, or what's been happening to me outside of the podcast with the dog stuff, that all kind of related. So I wanted to make that note. But yeah, I got Tom Breeze here. Wow, Dan, that was a really weird breakdown versus Antonio Arroyo, who I kind of just shit on. Not so much him, but just that Jackson Wink style. Because he seems like he's all like show and fodder, and he's going to the show and fodder camp. I'm like, no, you don't. You already have that athletic, long build and, propensity to throw fancy stuff. And, I don't know. So it's just like, you don't need to go to the camp that's going to be telling you to throw ponies all day and going for late round takedowns and spinning stuff that doesn't land. But hey, it works on the judges, so we'll see. But I don't think it's going to work on a more structured individual, should he hold that structure, which is the boxing structures to his savviness on the ground. I like Tom Breeze here. I don't even think he can get out wrestled by this cat from what I saw Arroyo doing. And the gas tank issues. So, yeah, I like Tom Breeze here. Next fight, Tanner Bowser, minus 185. Ilir Latifi, plus 160. I should really, even though I mean it well-meaning, and I do actually genuinely like Tanner Bowser as a fighter. I was listening to his, and I've heard this before, he's definitely got that, a bit of his chip on his shoulder, he's not going to mince his words attitude about him, which is very endearing and genuine. Another reason why, again, I appreciate me some Tanner Bowser, IFL, IFL Anacondas. He but was talking to Aaron Bronstetter on the TSN MMA show, and he was just like, said something about, he's like, asking about like something about hockey. He's like, well, I wouldn't know how to answer that, Aaron, because I'm not a professional hockey player. I wouldn't be so ignorant as to judge what they do as not a professional. I'm like, oh, I see where this is going. And sure enough, he's like, just like these MMA people. I'm like, oh god. And he didn't say my name or anything, thank God. But I'm just like, oh Jesus, I don't think Tanner Bowser would be a fan of me. But it's okay, I'm still a fan of him, and I'm gonna pick him here to outwork Ilir Latifi, who also is training with Francis Ngannou. But I feel like Ilir is kind of Ilir at this point. And hey, you can say that about Walt Harris too. I'm not just trying to be selective here or mean to Ilir. I love Ilir in the animal photos, but I feel like that's the same thing. And you go to his Instagram, and it's still the same thing. You see the animal photos, you see the, and I think, like I said, the Vivi, it's like you have this perception like, oh, he did better at heavyweight than I thought against Derek Lewis and fought at a higher pace. Maybe not because he's not cutting a higher weight, but not that significant strikes mean anything, but it's like 1, 5, and 7 are significant strikes that round, because you forget that he was trying to wrestle Derek Lewis down the whole time, because it was Derek Lewis that looked in better shape. It was Derek Lewis that improved his output. It was Derek Lewis that improved his initiative, and was forcing Latifi to fight. And I think Latifi, though losing, still kind of got a positive rub off that, which I'm not throwing shade on, because that was my initial impression too, till I went and refreshed myself on some of the stats and notes. Yeah, man, not confident in Latifi at all at this point. So, I know he started his career technically as a heavyweight, but the guy's generally listed at 5'8", generously listed at 5'8". And Bozier isn't the biggest heavyweight, but, as long as he gets up from a couple takedowns, I think he should be able to turn the tide come round 2. It's going to be one of those kind of fights. If Latifi has a good round early but doesn't hurt Bozier, much less get him out of there, doesn't even hurt him, maybe take a look at the live line. Maybe you're getting something better than the minus 185, but I don't know, man. I'm not in a hurry to, I feel like even if I did fully research this fight, I still would not be in a hurry or claiming that there were any sexy angles to play on this fight. So next is Montana De La Rosa, minus 270, Ariane Lipski, plus 230, taking De La Rosa here. She's a fighter usually not that I pick against, because her and Mark are just so of the same shoe. They're just very easy to get a beat on. So it's not that I don't like their style. If anything, I love me some boxing jiu-jitsu styles, but, they're not exactly like, prime BJ Penn or Nick or Nate Diaz boxing BJJ and jiu-jitsu, nor are they operating in the era of those said fighters. So it's fairly easy to forecast their matchups, let's just say, right? That being said, I do see why the line is getting stacked with De La Rosa. She will be a popular parlay piece. I don't blame that, by the way. Lipski is not going to be able... The ground game is not going to be the same here. And I'm not confident enough. And I think the skills are overinflated in general, but especially on the feet for Lipski. And that's not her fault, folks. Again, I hate jumping on these trains because, especially with a lot of fighters, but especially with the ladies, they get undue hype kind of put on them, I guess, for lack of a better word. And yeah, maybe X fighter doesn't deserve this much hype, and I wouldn't disagree with that. You can say that about quite a few, right? At the same time, it doesn't mean like it's their fault and fuck them and let's shit on them now. It's the system, But yeah, Lipski was definitely overhyped, and in the small cage with De La Rosa, who even taking shots from hitters like Araujo, who, she will still keep up volume and keep throwing. So I think she's going to easily get 2 out of the 3 rounds, if not find a finish on the floor by the 3rd. I wouldn't be too confident in the angles. You just kick for coverage, take her as a parlay piece or something, 270, if you are crazy enough to play parlays in a volatile sport like MMA. Makwan Amirkhani, minus 190, Kamula Kirk, plus 165. I like Amirkhani here. Where did this line open? 305. Money coming in on Kirk. But it is short notice, and both guys tend to gas. Both guys are grapplers, but Kirk grappling since age 4 with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu creds. However, Amirkhani, really talented in submissions and the more credentialed and better actual wrestler, and actually getting ready for this fight. So actually had a full camp. So I'll take him. I don't know if it's out of the frying pan and into the fire. I don't know how much I liked him at SBG trying to imitate Conor McGregor and getting really into boxing, but I didn't see any SBG on this camp this time around. And the camp he is working at just says Makwan Amirkhani on the mats, and I don't recognize anybody he's working with. So that'll be interesting. Manon Firio, minus 160. That's not going on because Tabitha Ricci stepped in at plus 415 underdog. Minus 525 is the favorite. Firo. Taking Firo here. Don't know anything about Tabitha Ricci. Apologies, guys. But the line kind of says the picture. And, well, make you act accordingly / stay away accordingly. Sean Woodson, minus 175. Yusuf Zalal, plus 155. Ended up taking Zalal here. Not confident in it at all. Probably could get boxed up here. Both guys can be on the back foot, and Zalal needs to pressure. As we've seen with Woodson, it can undo him. However, the grappling alone may trick Zalal into pressuring because I think Zalal naturally wants to stick and move and flow almost to a fault. Like, I didn't watch Andrea KGB's last fight where she actually scored the submission, but typically, as I say with Andrea KGB Lee, who Zalal has a lot of the same well-rounded sensibilities, is she will grapple herself out of an exchange as fast as she grappled herself into it. Now, Zalal wasn't purposely doing that. Seung-Woo Choi just came in, team handsome there, looking all muscled up like a stud, athletic as shit. But, just like Topuria, which didn't surprise me, and I told you about Topuria, folks, before he got hyped. So that wasn't a surprise, but, if the guy isn't as super athletic and as skilled, then perhaps it won't be as big of a deal. Now, Woodson is scrappy, though. We saw him against, who was that guy in the Contender Series? It was Kies's teammate, and he was a wrestler, Terrence McKinney. He was able to scrappily get up and, land a flying knee. That being said, I think Zalal better ground game, not better takedowns, but better ground game than that cat. And Zalal went from a purple belt to recently getting his brown belt in said time. So I'm hoping that he's realizing that he needs to make hay when he gets to these positions or rear positions. And rather than just scoring some points and allowing the transition to play out. And that's why he did his work to get his brown belt. And brown belt's a nice separating factor because, dopes like me can be a purple belt, folks. Sorry to break it to you. But brown belt, to me, is a big separating factor. For how seriously, how dedicated someone takes their game. So I do like that sign. Doesn't mean he's going to win, of course not. But I will take a flyer on him. I think the small cage will suit him, but size parity definitely looked like it affected Zalal. And although it was more pressure from veteran savvy of Julian Erosa Bueller, looks like Cameron from Ferris Bueller. God damn it, I keep getting thrown off so easily now. Even though it was pressure, you could make the argument that size parity for Woodson, which is clearly important, that tall of a guy cutting down to that weight, perhaps bothers him too. So, again, it could be a double-edged sword, that critique and criticism. So we'll see. I'll take Zalal, not confident. Don't follow me off that cliff. Mason Jones, minus 275. Alan Patrick, plus 235. Another parlay piece there. I like Mason Jones a lot. I don't know what you get with Montana De La Rosa, but that's something I would look to pair up with. Maybe that'll be the one thing I do, because I don't see any other chalk that I'm confident on this card. Pair up Montana and Mason, see what you get. Those are the most confident picks for me, for sure, here. I like Mason Jones. I picked him against, I know it was a silly, not confident pick against Mike Rodriguez, I believe it was, but Mike Davis, I'm sorry. But I think Davis was amidst of a botched weight cut, bad layoff, injuries, short notice, etc. Mason Jones, not just Cage Warriors champ, but one of those underrated skill sets I like, durable, has that attitude intangible, adversity blood definitely doesn't scare off that kid. He goes to the body. Actually he says he competed in karate and Muay Thai, but he actually has a pro boxing record of 12-0, and you see some semblances of that in his style. But he's also got the classic Welsh combo of a judo black belt and jiu-jitsu black belt, right? But that being said, with a lot of those judo guys, the way they tripod, they keep that real acute angle, so to speak, real slanted 45 slope, if you will. When they tripod up, makes it real hard to get their backs. And I think that is pretty much Alan Patrick's only way of winning this fight. Is getting an RNC or getting enough back control to convince some judges for 2 rounds and surviving the third. But Mason keeps coming, and I like him a lot here, so we'll leave it at that. Next fight, Muslim Salikhov, minus 245. Masa Randuba, Francisco Trinaldo, plus 205. Another dog pick I took here that wasn't too confident. Excuse me. But I took shouts to the MMA analysis. Took Grandpa Trinaldo here. I think the small cage suits him both for his striking. It's going to be bad for a Wushu Sanda guy who wants space, and good for a guy who wants to corral with heavy hooks, pressure, and perhaps some takedowns. Maybe Masa Randuba gets one more last performance squeezed out that he's not having to cut the weight, but he did not look good in his last fight, even though he cashed for us against Jai Herbert. Maybe he has fallen off a cliff, so do not be surprised, folks, if he has. I am going to pick him, though. Salikov, not that much younger. He turns 37 the day after this fight, so not that much younger than the 42-year-old here. Older welterweights. Give me Masaranduba. Jordan Levitt, you love it at Levitt. Shout out to Eugene S. Robinson, who has that same frame of mind. And Claudio Puelles, plus 170. I love my Peruvian brothers and sisters. I love my Peruvian food. But I don't remember Claudio Puelles being much better than who I thought was one of the worst fighters at the time he was in the UFC. And no offense to the kid, but Humberto Bandenay. And again, no offense to that scene, but you go watch a lot of the regional footage. I mean, these poor kids are fighting in what looks like chicken fence cages. They're so small and ridiculous. That said, Claudio Puelles, he's super young. He's only fought twice in the last 5 years, but he's still only 24, folks. Again, the scene he was from, the rushing of the fights, he got rushed to the scene. So this is not a bad thing. It also makes it hard to be confident in this fight. I'm going to pick Levitt to get his grappling going. Puelles will pull out stuff, but I don't think he'll be able to get it on Levitt. I will be interested, though, Puelles, who has catch wrestling sensibilities, because he comes from a lucha libre base, which is more synonymous with catch wrestling than more jiu-jitsu. If being around better wrestlers at Sanford MMA is going to help him, because that's where he's relocated to camp at. So I'm curious to see, but again, like Zane said, and I said too, there's always the adjustment of periods for camps. So don't expect to see anything too drastic right away. So for that, I'll take Levitt, who, seems like a guy that people are going to underestimate because of, maybe how he looks or comes off, but he seems to know what he's good at, and that's good enough for me, and the small cage seems to suit and favor what he's good at, which is grappling. So give me Levitt. All right, how did we do on time 57? All right, we got this just under an hour, I think. All right, from the top, taking Rosenstruck, shout out to the Fantasy Jewish Fight League, over Sakai, taking Walt Flanagan Harris over Tibura, Beer Run Tibura, taking Baeza over Ponzinibbio, bow your head, taking Dolidze over Starapoli, I'm not Italian, taking Todorovic over Rodriguez, taking Breeze over Arroyo, taking Tanner Bauer over Ilir Latifi, taking Montana De La Rosa over Ariane Lipsky, taking Makwan Amirkhani over Kamuela Kirk, taking Manuel Ferro over Tabitha Ricci, taking Sean Woodson over Yusuf Zalal. No, I'm taking Zalal over Woodson, sorry. Taking Mason Jones over Alan Patrick, taking Francisco Masaranduba Trinaldo over Muslim Salikov, taking Jordan, you love it, over Claudio Puelles. I may pair together Montana De La Rosa and Mason Jones and just stay the fuck away, motherfucker. It's just one of those days. It's all about the research. I'm just kidding. That'd be funny if I edited that in. I won't be that cruel. Good luck on your picks and plays. Thanks for the well wishes. Apologies for the pouring out my beers on my soapbox there in the beginning. I'm okay. Appreciate you guys' love and messages. Sincerely wish you all the best. And until next time, protect your neck.